Beta Israel, they were thinking that the last Jews, the last Beta Israel in the world. The truth is that they came because Zionism, Ethiopian Jews here, came back to the original names. And you know where it happens? In the army.
If you want to start by introducing yourself, a little bit about who you are and what it is that you're doing at the moment in
Yeah,
this
sure.
crazy world.
So first of all, thank you for inviting me here for the studio today. You're doing something very important, especially in Australia. I know, like, you guys facing a lot of anti-Semitism, and I'm sending you hugs and love and support. And so my name is Brhan. I was born in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia. And me and my parents made Aliyah when I was a baby. I was 6 months, and then we moved to Jerusalem. Right now, I am an educator and social media activist about Ethiopian Jews, um, also known Beta Israel, and um, and also about traveling in Israel and Israel lifestyle. Um, I'm from the south. I live in the south. I live in Ashdod. I'm 27, actually 27 and two days.
Mazel tov.
Um, תודה רבה. And yeah, so I started all this activism and showing the face of Israel, like my face, like my Ethiopian community. It's because people didn't know, and I've heard like after October 7th, a lot of lies about about you know Jews in general, like Jews are like white Europeans, and I was like, hey, I'm not white. So yeah, I started this, and I wanted to show how the Israel society is from a different perspective. So this is my story of my social media.
So before we get into what it is you're doing now and your experiences at the moment, what was it like? Do you remember much when you came to Israel? Because you were young. Do you remember that experience?
So no, but I throughout all my childhood, we were like kind of like olim chadashim, like new people in Israel, and it was very interesting, challenging. The fact that you're coming from other culture and other country, like different, way different than the Western world that also Israel included in. It makes you face a lot of things. For instance, sorry. For instance, in your home, you're facing one culture, you have in one culture, but when you're going out of your home, you're facing another culture, like the Israeli culture, and you want to integrate, but you also want to maintain your culture. Yeah. And
So,
also sorry.
yeah, no, continue.
I wanted to say that one of the things, the interesting things that you want so much to integrate and you want to be like part of the Israeli society, and I am the Israeli society. But like for example, I don't know if you guys had it when we moved to Israel, a lot of Ethiopians and also like other Jews who came from Morocco, from Yemen, um, they changed their name. Like their teachers, they like other people changed their name. And I also had it when I was in the second grade. My teacher wanted to change my name from Brhan to Bracha. Because she said,
Okay.
it's an Hebrew name and it will be more easier to pronounce. And it's not just for me, it's also for you. And I'm like, hey, what's wrong with my name? Yeah. And I said to her, no, my father doesn't allow me. If you want, you can speak with my dad. But back then in the time, a lot of my friends changed their name and they got new names from their teacher, from their counselor from their, like, to Rachel, to Yaakov. There's nothing wrong with those names, but they have like their names, their Ethiopian names that they were born with, especially in our culture, that every name has a meaning. The meaning of my name is the first light in the morning, means dawn.
Mm.
And yeah, so every name has a meaning. And when you want to integrate in the Israel society, you 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 need to think again if you want to change your name or not. So one of the good things that happened recently in the recent years, that Ethiopian Jews here came back to the original names. And you know where it happens? In the army. Because in the army, you're
Really?
starting like a new page, like everything, it's new, and you're just going with your name.
Did you serve in the IDF?
So I didn't serve in the IDF. I was doing a community service instead. I
Mm-hmm.
was helping Ethiopian families to integrate. I'm sorry. I was helping to Ethiopian families to integrate in the Israel society, like families that made Aliyah. And in the other year, I was a tour guide for high schools, and I took them to trips from the north to the south. I enjoyed both of the years. It was very meaningful to me. And yeah,
So, yeah, we have a similar thing with the names in Australia. Generally, I think people that come from Asian countries, when they come to Western countries, they change their name to a Western name um, because they probably don't expect Australians, well, Australians don't want to make the effort to learn how to pronounce different names,
exactly.
I think. But I think it's a shame because I feel like you're losing a part of your culture when you do that. Um, names are important. You can be part of a society and still have a different name. It makes you unique. Um,
Right.
so it's good that you kept your name. So did your family, when you were making that transition from Ethiopia to Israel, did your family have um, struggled to make that transition? Was there a lot of, I'm sure there was a lot of culture shock, and I've heard from other interviews I've watched with Ethiopian Israelis saying that when they first came to Israel, they didn't even know that white Jews existed, and it was a shocking experience for them.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'll tell you in general that Ethiopian Jews in Ethiopia, before they met the rest of the Jews, like Beta Israel, they were thinking that the last Jews, the last Beta Israel in the world, because they were disconnected from the rest of the Jewish world. And the life in Ethiopia, you're always speaking about Jerusalem
Mm,
and about moving to Israel and to do Aliyah. And always it was so meaningful that when you're eating the food with your family, so you're blessing. Like next year we're gonna be in Jerusalem. And when you're going to your field, when you're working in your fields, you're blessing. Like next year I'm going to work in agriculture in Jerusalem. When we have like marriage, next year it's going to be in Jerusalem.
mm,
Funerals next year, Kilo, everything, it's so connected and to Jerusalem and the dream, and they were like craving to come to Jerusalem. And one of the misconceptions that people think about Ethiopian Jews who made Aliyah, they were like, oh, they were poor, they came from like African country, they probably didn't have like sources there. This is why they came. But no, that's not the truth. The truth is that they came because Zionism, and they came because
mm,
they had good life in Ethiopia. They had like part of the times, not everyone, not every time, but they came to Israel because they believed and they wanted to be in Israel, in Jerusalem, in Jerusalem. And they always have dreaming to go and to come to Jerusalem. And they were like talking and telling us stories about Jerusalem and how everything it's gold and how, like the first Ethiopians that came to Israel, they were 100% sure that the Bet HaMikdash still exists,
Mm.
the temple still exists. And they were like, whoa, where's the Bet HaMikdash? And
Yeah.
people told us that Jerusalem, it's from gold. And they came to Jerusalem like, what's going on? Where's the gold? So that's one of the things that it's very challenging, that when you're coming to Israel, to Western culture, it's like the dream that you were thinking of about
Mm.
Jerusalem, it's not exist anymore.
Yeah.
But we thank God that we are here. I think also you need to understand that in Ethiopia, the way they were living, it's very together. It's a commune life.
Mm.
Everything you're doing, it's together. One of the biggest fears that we have in the Western world is to be alone, is to feel lonely. So back then in Ethiopia, you didn't have that feeling because you were doing everything together. Even like the meal that you were eating, you were not eating this by yourself. You were sharing this with the rest of your family. And when you're going to working on my field, let's say I have a coffee trees and I need to harvest them, so the rest of my family would help me. And next week, I'm going to help you with
Mm-hmm.
your, I don't know, tomatoes. So everything it was doing together. And here everything is so individual, Western world. Like I have my own achievements and I have my own goals and I need to fulfill myself. And first of all, it's me and then everyone else. But then there in Ethiopia, you were doing everything together. You're not only thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others. And also like the in Ethiopia, the father was the head of
Mm-hmm.
the home. And imagine what it's to move to another country, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, and then your kids has more authority than you. I had it with my parents that they were asking me a lot of things like, "Hey, Brian, can you translate the pensions documentaries and the salary documentaries?" And I'm like, Abba, I don't know what it is. I'm like sixth grade.
Yeah.
Can I go to the mall with my friend? And he was like, no, you need to translate it to me. I need to
Mm.
understand. And other Ethiopians were taking their parents to the doctor, and they were the one that translating to the doctor or to their mom what happened and what's going on with their body and with their feelings. And you're coming to a situation that the kids know more and know better than his parents, and that causes a lot of crisis. Also, women in Israel went to work and got their own independent life, kind of, because like back then in Ethiopia they were leaning on the men mainly.
Mm.
So so the men of the home, they were facing a lot of emotional crisis, like what is my new role right now? And
Right.
how can I be the leader of the family if I kind of like lost it? For me, it came to a situation that, like, unfortunately, I thought that I know more than my parents.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, Abba, בסדר, בסדר. And, I had time, like, in my community service that I broke my leg. And I called my dad, and he said to me, you know what? If your leg is cold, go to the hospital and they will help you. Because I know from the village, if someone was breaking his leg or his arm, um, and his leg is cold and his hand is cold, it means that he's broke his arm or leg. And I was like, nah, Dad, you're not a doctor, please. Kilo, I went to the doctor and the doctor just checked my check my feet, and he said, it's totally fine. You don't need nothing. But I couldn't go on my feet. It was so hurt. It was so cold, and I was washing my feet, and I was like, why it's not getting warm?
Mm.
And still, like I went to the second doctor, and he said the same, and to the third doctor, and and I was speaking with the third doctor, and I told him, listen, it's like you're the third doctor, just do everything you can, just check my leg, check my feet. And it was like, okay, I'm gonna check your feet, and guess what? You broke your leg. And I broke my feet, I'm sorry. And in that moment, I was like, wow, my dad was right. Like sometimes we measure wisdom by educational, like if you're going to the university, if you're going to studies, but
Mm.
it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom if you didn't go there, if you didn't study there.
Yeah.
Uh, so so that's one example. I can tell you about like my cousin when he was doing like a little bit troubles in high school. So the teacher called to the parents to talk, and my cousin was the translator. So the teacher said, "Oh, your son, he's not staying in class. He's going out. He's misbehaving." And what my cousin said, "Oh, mom, I'm good, and she likes me." It's funny. There's something sad in it.
Mm.
But yeah, this is some of the challenges that we were facing when we were moving from Ethiopia to Israel
So what year did your family move?
in 1998.
Right. Okay. Um, so does that mean that the Ethiopian communities in Israel are they still very uh, community focused and they've
That's a
brought
good
some of that
question.
over?
It's a good question because the way I see it, I can talk about my community in my city, is that we still having community life, even though we're living in a city, and even though it's like very individual life. For example, if someone is getting married, and like Ethiopian weddings are very big, like it can be 700 guests, 500 guests.
Yeah, they look amazing.
Everyone is coming, yalla, mishpacha, like the extended family. No
Mm,
one is like asking you if you're coming or not coming, no one checking you like if you're coming or not coming. And so one of the things that you're doing, it's like the parents of the groom and the bride, they making the food for the guests.
mm,
Like they're doing like a little bit party, and you can make like 500 meals. So each one of the mothers in our community go go to the parents groom or to the parents bride, take some dough, like the teff dough, and making injera in her home. And in the wedding, she's bringing what she made. So instead of like I need to have all the responsibility to make the food and to bring the drinks. No, you don't have to.
mm,
We got you. We got your back. We'll help you. And it's the same with I see it like in funerals. If someone get in trouble, if the money or like don't have like financial problems, everyone will come and help him. Even though it's someone that he lives far away, like in the north, or someone from the south, or someone that is um not really close to me, I'll still help him. And also, I can tell you that like one of the things that we kind of like we kind of lost, that in Ethiopia there was like a Bet Hanida, like house for women that were in that period or
mm,
they gave birth. And in Ethiopia it was like like womanhood, like helping each other. You're like in a one house, only women, and who's taking care of your child, who's taking care of your children, who's
mm,
taking care of the things that you need to do. You have a lot of things to do in the village. So you have your aunties and you have your cousins that will help you, and they helping and they nurturing your kids and they helping your kids while you are resting and you're like having like your own time with your friend. It's like it's nice. It's like having a villa with your friends in the village and yalla, everyone take the responsibility from me.
Mm,
But in Israel, we don't do it anymore. But I can say that when I'm looking to my mom, when I'm looking and how she's behaving, she she take cares of everyone. She's nurturing everyone.
mm.
And even if we have like guests and it's really late and they're coming home and like asking for help, she'll come and help. And you can see it in other households. And it's really interesting because also the knowledge, how they share knowledge with each other, like things that we did in Ethiopia and the lifestyle here in Israel, how they're maintaining the food and how they're maintaining the health care that we're in Ethiopia and they're sharing it here in Israel. So this is why I see in my home.
That sounds really nice. I mean, I wish we had a bit more of that community approach in the West.
I
Um,
agree.
and I think part of that has existed in many different Jewish communities. Like sometimes when the thing that non-Jews often say about their observation of Jewish communities, they always comment on, how we all help each other and we're all whatever. And being part of it, personally, I don't see it as much as I wish it could be. I definitely think that's something that we should all be learning from communities like yours, um, how to, help each other more and not be thinking so individualistically. Do you find that individualism exists in the rest of Israel in comparison to like other Western countries, or do you think Israel is sort of a unique mix of that collectivist and individualistic society? Because you've got things like kibbutzim, which is like a socialist concept, which doesn't exist really anywhere else, and yeah.
Well, I can tell you that we definitely feel like collectivism here in Israel. I feel it. I felt it especially after the war that happened, that everyone was helping each other. Like, for instance, my sister would make Ethiopian food to bases, to IDF bases, even though she didn't know none of them. And other people making like good food for the IDF soldiers, and people were volunteering and people were helping financially to do the reserve families. And you can see how everyone got involved in others' life, even though they didn't know them. People went to funerals of people that they didn't know just to support, just to be there.
Mm.
That was the strength, and it's still the strength of Am Israel, especially the Jews in diaspora. They came to help, like in agriculture and visiting like bases and in helping financially to companies that they were destroyed because of the war. So you could see that it still exists, but we need to practice that, not in bad times, not in crisis times,
Mm.
also when we everything is okay, when everything is
Yeah,
cool. So to think how we can do it better.
yeah, definitely. So, for those who may not know much about the Ethiopian Jewish story and the history, um, do you want to maybe briefly explain, like, historically how Jews ended up in Ethiopia?
Oh, oh.
If you know, it's like,
I can tell you what's the story inside our community and how other people perceive it. So you asking how Jews came to Ethiopia?
Yeah, and then what life was like maybe once, because you've been there for a long, long time before you came to Israel. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there are um there are several options how Ethiopian Jews, like how Beta Israel came to be a community in Ethiopia, and how the like our leaders, the Kehanot, the Kesim, it's the spiritual leaders of the community. They were always saying that we are part of the Judea tribe,
Mm-hmm.
and that we came after the first exile that happened back then in the first temple destruction. Others say that it's maybe like other story that it's because Queen Sheba, that she came to King Solomon,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought a child together, Menelik, and Menelik was the son of King Solomon and the Queen Sheba. And when he came back to Ethiopia, he had um, the tribe that were escorting him. And from each tribe, there was like 1,000 people, if I'm not mistaken. And they escorted him to Ethiopia and they stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Other thing that I've heard is that the Ridbaz, Rabbi David ben Shlomo. So he was the one that was saying that Ethiopian Jews are descendant of the Dan tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the chief rabbi in Israel, Rav Ovadia Yosef, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, he was the one that was saying Ethiopian Jews are really Jews. They're not pretending to be Jews, because back then in the time, the Israel government and the Israel society, they didn't believe that there are Black Jews or Ethiopian Jews in Ethiopia, how it's possible.
Mm.
And he was the one that was leaning on the Ridbaz and said, yes, they're Jewish. Um, so and that was the life in Ethiopia. And the Beta Israel were keeping mainly the Torah, how it preserved back then in the time, in the biblical times. So everything that was practiced is the way that was like mamash, like back then in the times. For
Mm.
instance, we didn't celebrate Purim,
Yeah.
we didn't celebrate Hanukkah, but we were keeping the purifying mitzvot like Tuma, Venida, like as it was in the Torah. For instance, if people were touching someone who is not Jewish, they needed to purify themselves. They were so strict with it, and how to observe Shabbat, not working on Shabbat, resting on Shabbat,
Mm-hmm.
and how to observe Yom Kippur and Brit Milah. Everything was as it was celebrated. It was as it was in the Torah. And as I told you, the dream was always come to Jerusalem to reunite and to come to Israel. And the story like starts 1,000 years ago when they were practicing their Jewish tradition and their Jewish heritage. And the first attempt to make Aliyah was in the 50s, but it didn't really work out. It didn't really work out. It was Abba Mahari, who was a leader in Ethiopia, that said, "Okay, guys, we're gonna go to Israel." So he picked some of the villages, the Jewish villages, and he said to them, "Okay, we're going to Israel." It's really less known story, but it was like the first and the beginning that attempt to go to Israel. So Abba Mahari was taking his Jewish people Beta Israel, and he believed that if he will come to the sea, they came to a water source. I don't remember which water was it, and he believed that he will open the water like Moses did,
Mm.
and it didn't succeed, and a lot of people died,
Right.
and they came back to the villages, the one who got rescued and they stayed alive. And that was like the first attempt. And other attempt were like Ethiopians that moved to Israel like as a tourists, and they stayed there. And as I told you, like the Israel government didn't believe that they were Jews. So like as we are progressing, I guess like the big operation, Solomon operation,
Yeah.
Moses operation, but most of the people don't know that there were like Ethiopian Jews and the Kahanoch, the Kesim, that they were working so hard to make it happen.
Mm.
Like most of the Jews in diaspora or Jews in Israel give the credit to the Mossad, which is great, but without people that were working so hard behind the scene, like Adisu Masala, like Zemene Barhani, like Belaynesh Ayek, like people that were Zionists and they're working behind the scene, like with North America Jews to
Mm.
put pressure on the Israel government to bring the Ethiopian Jews to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And like protester, I've read that I've read the book. There was protests about to make the Ethiopian Jews come to Israel in the state and also in North America. And they were putting a lot of pressure, like the Ethiopian Jews and the Ethiopian leaders, the Kehanoch, the Kesim, with other activists. They were working together with the Jews in the state and Jews in North America to make that happen. And then after that, the Mossad came and really rescued them, rescued the Ethiopian Jews to Israel, um, the Ethiopian Jews to Israel. And then the first big operation was in 84. There was Moses operation. And
Yeah.
then 92, there was Solomon operation.
Mm.
And after that, we came to in 98. As I told you, like Ethiopia, it's like giant country, and the fact that other villages, Jewish villages, just came up and went to Israel doesn't mean that the other Jewish villages heard about it.
Mm.
And also Moses operation was really processed. Like Jews left everything and
Yeah.
went thousands of miles to Sudan, where there the planes were waiting for them to take them to Israel.
Mm.
So the ambition and the willingness to come to Israel and to Jerusalem and leave everything behind, everything, your fields, your friends, everything that you have known, just to come to Israel, and on the way to lose your family. Like on the way to Sudan, there was 4,000 Ethiopian Jews, Beta Israel, that didn't make it, including kids, babies, women, old people. So in order to be here,
Mm.
in order to be in Jerusalem,
So, are there many Ethiopian Jews still in Ethiopia now?
yeah, yeah. Some of them don't want to make Aliyah. They want to stay in their village. They have like a good life there,
Mm-hmm.
like the rest of the Jews in diaspora.
Yeah.
And some of them are waiting to make Aliyah in Gondar, Addis Ababa, and they want to reunite with their families.
Mm. And is the Israeli government still assisting Ethiopian Jews to come to Israel now?
Yeah, they're still making Aliyah, but there's always room for improvement.
Mm. So, you obviously grew up in Israel. What was your childhood and growing up in Israeli society as an Ethiopian Jewish girl at the time? What was that experience like for you?
I'll be honest, it was like I enjoyed it. In my neighborhood, um, I had like Moroccan friends, Russian friends, Yemenite friends, people like who came from the diaspora, and I had a great time. But also, it was, as I told you, it it was really facing other culture. Once you go out from your home, you're facing other culture. And that was challenging. If it's the language barrier, if it's the cultural barrier, the cultural gap, like you're becoming more and more Israeli, but when you're coming back home, you you still have the Ethiopian culture
Mm.
and you still have cultural gaps. I can share like one thing that in the Ethiopian culture, I don't know if it's like specifically to Jews. I think it's like practiced like among all Ethiopians that you're not allowed to marry someone who is your cousin 7 generations back. Okay, like let's say me and you are cousins, and we're going 7 generations back, like my grandfather and your grandmother are siblings. Okay, we
Right.
can't date, we can't marry.
Mm-hmm.
So in Ethiopia, you couldn't do this, and you needed to find also a Jewish person.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how hard it is. Like my father went out from his village 3 days to look for a Jewish woman because they were
Right.
like
Because everyone's
the
related. Yeah.
can because everyone
Yeah.
were related.
No.
And imagine that. And you
Mm.
come into Israel and it's not exist. Like who would think about it? It's so like my friend told me, "What? Are you maintaining it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I have it in my home. I have it in my culture."
Mm.
And imagine what is to date someone and to fall in love with someone. That's what happened to me. And you check and my dad and I was like, "Oh, dad, I have a boyfriend. I want you to know him." And he was like, "Oh, wait. What is
Oh
the
no.
name of his grandma or and his grandpa?" I was like, Dad, why are you asking?" And he was like, "No, let's check which village they're coming from and who is their ancestors, and let's check if we are related." And like in the Israeli culture, it's not exist. No one asking, "Oh, before you dating someone, check if you're a family."
Yeah.
Kilo, it's not exist. But this is like a main thing that other Israelis are not facing.
Mm.
And and then he like opened a book, a notebook, and he called to his cousin from Haifa, and I was like, "Yeah, that's person, they're coming from that village," and they were writing everything because everything in Ethiopia you
Wow.
do it by memory. You know
Mm.
every generation of someone just by memory because you know which family they're coming from, which Jewish village they're coming from, and just to maintain the generations.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that the the grandparents of my boyfriend back then, and he was opening the notebook, writing down everything. It was like calculating it, like these memes that you have, like people that
Yeah.
everything in their minds,
Mm.
and was like, "You know what? There is a lot of Jewish men here. You need to break up your own family, Ken." And and it
Shit.
was so funny because I was like, "Are you serious? No one does it in the Israel society. Like, why we need to maintain that thing? We came to Israel and we need to stop it." And he said, "No, we need to preserve what we did back then in Ethiopia. We can't continue with that. It's something that we did for generations." And for a lot of Ethiopians, they were facing it when they were dating other Ethiopians,
Mm.
something that other Israelis are not facing. And it was really, really hard because for one hand, you want to keep your love life. On the other hand, you need to respect your culture, your heritage, your parents, and it's not easy.
So
So,
is that something you think about now when you meet people? Like, do you do the math before you date
I
someone? Or
yeah, no, it's not that I'm doing the math before. It's like sometimes I would check with other people that knows this guy if we might be related. So I'll save time because with that man, I broke up with him. in order to respect my culture and everything. So that's like a big thing in the Ethiopian community that's not exist in the rest of the Israeli community. And yeah, but like it's something that very challenging when you come into a new society, but also you know that you are part of that society.
Mm.
So so you navigate between maintaining what you have, like maintaining your name, maintaining your traditions, maintaining your holidays, and two things that you are, okay, we came to Israel, we're not doing this anymore. Um, so yeah.
So I know that there are a number of Ethiopian traditions, Jewish traditions that the Ethiopian communities in Israel celebrate. What are some of your favorite traditions that maybe other Jewish backgrounds don't celebrate?
So have you heard about the Sigd?
I have, but I don't know that much about it. But I've
Oh,
seen, videos and things. But
so it's a Ethiopian Jewish holiday that celebrated 50 days after Yom Kippur. And it's actually the beginning of the day start with fasting. People thinking that it's a day of celebration, but no, it's a day of cheshbon nefesh. It's like to think what you were doing and what you were achieving after Yom Kippur. You know, after Yom Kippur, we're promising so many things to ourselves, to God, to our family. Oh, I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to be better. Okay, you want to be better? You are 50 days after that. Are you maintaining what you promised? And back then in Ethiopia, there was like a Jewish village that were hosting other Jewish villages, that he was close to a mountain. And before the day, they would purify themselves. They would go to the river. They would wash themselves. They would washing their clothes, and they would purify themselves, wear white clothes, and go and climb the mountain. In the mountain, the kahanot, the kesim, the spiritual leaders would read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, the book of Shemot, and to remind to the Beta Israel, don't forget that we are Beta Israel. Don't forget that we are Jewish. Don't forget to maintain your Jewish life. Shabbat, uh, Tara Benida, purification, the holidays. Just remember who you are. And they were reading from the Orit. It's the Jewish Ethiopian book, Orit. We call it Orit. And they would read it to everyone, and everyone would listen quietly, as it was in Ma'amad Har Sinai, in the mountain of Sinai. And after that, after they were praying, after they were praying towards Jerusalem, they were like again like thinking what they were did, and reunite with God, reunite with Hashem. They would they would go off from the mountain back to the village, and then it would be like a big feast. So here in Israel, we're doing kindly similar. We're going to the place named in Jerusalem, Armon HaNatziv, which is quite a mountain, and we are praying there. For this year was really powerful. I was there, and they mentioned the hostages, they mentioned the families, they mentioned the people that were lost, their loved ones. They mentioned all the women that have that they're facing the challenge of living by themselves because their husband in the war, or husband like unfortunately passed away. Like everything, all those challenges that we were praying on Am Yisrael that it will be like better next year. And and after you reunite with Hashem, reunite for Am Yisrael, then you, after that, I think at 12 or 1 p.m., you are doing a feast, you're celebrating, you're eating. And what I love about this day is that first, not all the Ethiopians here are going to Jerusalem. Part of them are working, part of them continue their lives, and it's also okay. But I like to see the mothers who were not using like siddur, like a book, and like opening their hands like this, closing their eyes, and just talking with God. And you
Mm,
can sense that energy that coming out from them, that they're praying for others. It's not only for them, they're praying for others.
mm,
And it's such a strong thing to see, like how you're not egoist. You're thinking about others, you're thinking about your nations, your brothers, your sisters. And that's the thing that I love about the Sigd. And right now in Israel, it became a really big thing. Like we celebrate it in schools. We mentioned this in universities and like places in work. So that the rest of the Israelis would also integrate and know, and they can also practice this holiday because now it's belonged to Olam Israel. It's not only for the Beta Israel, for the Ethiopian Jews to celebrate it. Yeah, so that's my favorite holiday. What about you? What is your favorite holiday?
oh, um, I think in the last couple of years, I've actually enjoyed, I mean, I know a lot of people say it, but I actually enjoy Yom Kippur for the opportunity to really reflect. And, sometimes we need that little bit of suffering to, take us away from the mundane, everyday life that distracts us, takes us away from spirituality. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, no one enjoys fasting, but
Yeah,
I think the concept of Yom Kippur is really important, and you know, it's similar,
yes, like
I think.
restarting yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, um, and also it's seems to be one of those holidays that even people that are not religious at all, they still observe it to some
yeah.
extent.
Hmm.
So it even speaks to the most secular of Jews for some
Yeah.
reason. So yeah. Um, so have you been in Israel in this past year since October 7th? You've been there this whole time?
Yeah, but also we're in the States, in the Midwest countries. I went to a delegation by Israel Is. It's an NGO that works to do advocacy, but in a different way. And we took two Nova survivors, and they were speaking their story about how what was on that day.
Mm,
And we were speaking mainly to Jewish students in the Midwest campuses, in the Midwest universities like Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin,
yeah.
and etc. And for me, it was really interesting to see how the Jews in diaspora are experiencing the October 7th. Like, how did you experience it?
Um, Me personally,
Yeah,
um, I mean, I remember it's like one of those moments where people say, "Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?" Or "Do you remember where you were when
mm,
Elvis died?" Or I remember exactly where I was when I found out that Israel was at war, which was the first thing that I found out because it was during the Chag and that wasn't on my phone or anything. But for us, it was still, I had to wait until the evening before I um, found out what was going on. But my mom, I remember I was sitting outside and my mom comes outside and she says to me with like this like really, really serious face and she says, Israel is at war. And I was like, what do you mean?
wow.
What do you mean? What's happening? What's going on? And then, as soon as the Chag was over, you go on your phone and bit by bit, you know, a video here, a news headline there, nobody knows what's going on. We all think it's something small, and then all this information slowly keeps coming out. And I think that week I was I think I was in a bit of a daze. I felt like I was in an alternate universe. Like suddenly the whole world had changed and nobody else around me saw it differently, understood what had happened. And I think that since then, it's like I live in a different world to the one I knew before. And I think that's the experience of a lot of Jews all around the world. I think what is really amazing, well, interesting, is that so many Jews outside of Israel have had a similar experience to me, and people who are not Jewish that don't know much about Israel and Judaism, they don't understand why it affects us so much. Something, say, in Australia, why do we care so much about something happening halfway across the world? What do you care? They're like, it's very difficult to explain that connection that we have to each other, which is thousands of years old connection, for someone that doesn't have any frame of reference to something like that. But yeah, that was my experience. But what was your experience?
For me, we had siren. I think it's 6:30 in the morning. And because I'm from the South, we're getting used to that because throughout my childhood and my upbringing, I grew up with sirens and like missiles attack, and we were running to the shelter every like 4 or 5 years. So I was like, what is this siren? How it's coming from nowhere? But yeah, it's okay. Yeah, let's go to the shelter. I didn't take it seriously. And then it was like minute after minute, a lot of sirens, and I was like, whoa, something's going on. And we were keeping Shabbat, so we didn't have phones with us. We didn't use the TV. And our neighbor said, listen, there are terrorists in Israel and they're kidnapping people. And that's the moment I was terrified. I was like, wow, Emily, what's going on here? You feel like it's the end of the world. And the commander of my brother called him on Shabbat. And he said, okay, you gotta come up to the north. There's something serious going on. And once the commander called, we understood that there's something serious going on here. And again, we didn't use the TV, we didn't use the phones. I was just praying all the Shabbat for the rest of Am Israel. Shabbat went out, and then we saw the news, and we were terrified. I couldn't sleep. And what happened in the Nova party, in the Nova festival, and what happened to the families, we have a baby that is hostage, Kfir Ben Shiri. It's insane.
Yeah.
And it was devastating because we didn't know how many bodies there are. And there are families that they're doing the funerals and no one was coming because the rest of the unit of the soldier is still in Gaza or still in the north. There was like chaos in Israel. And I remember like the weeks it goes, I went to funerals of people that I don't know just to support, but it was day after day after day. It was so hard. And also like I've lost people that I know. One I've worked with in Hilton, and one we grew up together. They were heroes. One, he died at the base, in the base when he was trying to protect the girls that ran into the shelter. His name is Nathaniel Young. He was a lone soldier from London. And the other one is Mulugeta Gadif, that we grew up together. he went from his home in Kiryat Gat to help the the moshavim, the kibbutzim, and he didn't survive it. But yeah, it was really chaos, and the feeling that you have, it's like I can't do nothing. What can I do? What can I do? I can't be a combat. I can't go to the south to help. What can I do?
Mm.
So and then it began the idea of my sister to make food for soldiers and to visit families in Shiva. We went to a lot of Shivas, and it was like so weird and surreal. Like, which reality am I?
Yeah.
And two things that I learned from this war is, first, if you have a dream, just do it. We don't know when we are finishing our lives.
Mm.
And second thing is to be more compassionate to others. Like, let's say I was honking while I was driving because I'm a very typical Israeli, but now I stopped to do it because I don't know if the people who's in front of me is a father of a soldier that he lost, or a mother that her daughter she's kidnapped. I don't know, like the
Yeah.
situation here in Israel that most of us, I have a friend uh, who visited this Hanukkah in Israel, and she was like, "Why people are so stressed here?" And I was like, "Girl, you're not facing it in New York, but
Mm.
people here are facing stress constantly because we have relatives that are in the world. They're like soldiers, they're our family, our friends, women that didn't see her husband because he was in duty reserve for 100 days,
Yeah.
or kids that they didn't see their dad, or um, the hostages families. Like, the situation is so, it's like walking on eggs. But at the same time, I feel like more love to people. I feel more love. Like, I'm walking on the streets and I'm like, she's my sister, he's my brother. And like, we are always arguing, especially in the situation right now with all the politicians and everything.
Mm.
But the process that I see here, it's like more compassionate, more compassion, people and society. And we're still facing hard things. We're still disagreeing on things, and we're still having people who have no faith in the Israel society and still arguing. And you always need to look for the good, and you always need to find that good point, good point in others. And it's a process, but this word taught me a lot. Yeah.
So you started making videos on social media, I assume, to combat some of the extreme anti-Semitism and the false narratives that have appeared around the world since October 7th. What have you found is, like, do you find that that is the best approach? And what's been your
So
experience with it?
at the beginning, I was arguing and discussing for hours in comments on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And I was replying to each post, and I was like, Brhan, this is like, it takes all your energy, Kilo, stop it. And then I thought to myself, what can be the best way to combat those anti-Semites? And for me, what personally I do is to show our strength, is to show what is Beta Israel, is to show what is the Israel society. And then people will be, oh, I didn't know that you were doing XYZ. I didn't know that you were taking care of each other so much. I didn't know that the reality of non-Jews here, it's different. And that's the way you break stereotypes instead of arguing with someone And, you know, I get a lot of hate comments. Oh, you're a nigga, go back to Africa. You're a slave. No one wants you here in Israel, second citizen, and a lot of lies. And it was a little bit hard for me to read those comments and
Yeah.
to read those like people like sending me on my DMs hateful comments. But on the other hand, I also get beautiful comments, people from Australia, Jews from Australia, people from Kenya, people from Egypt, even Muslims from Indonesia. And I was like, wow, this is doing a great impact.
Yeah.
And it's step by step, and it's showing our strength. And I know that also other activists on social media are doing a good job by combating those comments. And I'm like, I don't need to do it. I want to show something else that can elevate our society and
Mm.
elevate the way other people like non-Jews perceive us.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, like also like a lot of people don't know about Ethiopian Jews and about uh, Black Jews. And for me, it's funny. I was in South Africa before the war, and I was in supermarket, and I wanted to buy like a wine for the kiddush.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked one of the employees, "Do you have a kosher wine?" And he looked at me and he was like, "What? Do you have a kosher wine?" And he said to me, "Why? What do you mean why? Because I want a kosher wine." He said to me, "I'm confused. Is for your white boss?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"No, no, I'm Jewish." And he looked at me so surprisingly. He was like, "What?" And it's funny because like non-Jews or non-Israelis, when they see me, they don't think, oh, she might be Jewish or she might be Israeli. The first thing that they see is the skin color. And
Mm.
for me, like I also put attention on my skin color, of course, but it's not the main thing. You know, for me, I know that I have like a Jewish neshama. And in this lifetime, I'm in an Ethiopian avatar body. I could be like in other bodies as well. I could be in like a Yemenite body. I could be like an Ashkenaz body. And I know there's a
Yeah.
significance to my culture
Mm.
and to my skin color, and I respect it and I love it. But this is not my main identity. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a part of your identity, but it's not
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So I'm holding like both identities and a lot of identities. But I also remember that this is not really determinate who I am.
Mm.
Because like my soul is infinite, it's way beyond definitions.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm trying to hold it. Ken, it's really interesting.
So, what are some of the things that you've seen since the war that um, have really give you a sense of hope in the future for Israel and for the Jewish people?
I think the connection between the Jews in diaspora and the Israelis, the Jewish community here in Israel, it got stronger. And I see a lot of people are caring and coming to volunteer. People from LA, from California, from all over the states, and people from London come to Israel to support. And I think we should maintain that relationship and not be with each other only in the hard times. Um, that's the main thing that I saw. Like when we and also like the how has the Jewish identity got way up, like raised so much up. You can see people are so proud in their Jewish identities that they were they were not proud before the October 7th.
Mm.
And for instance, the synagogue in Kibbutz Be'eri that got opened and people were praying there. And for instance, when we were standing in the university, I think in Ohio or Michigan, I don't remember, and we were standing with a sign a I'm an Israeli, ask me everything. And we saw someone who's taking his high necklace from inside his shirt to
Mm.
outside of his shirt because he was proud of who he is. And
Did many
once you,
people did many people approach you with that
yeah,
sign?
actually, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And actually, yes, some of them asked about what happened October 7th and if
Mm.
it's that really real. Have you been there? Did you see the pictures? Do you have like some of them like they didn't really believe that um people were murdered brutally. And thank God,
Yeah.
well, Baruch Hashem, that the two of our survivors, beautiful sisters, I appreciate and I admire them. They were there and they're like, yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
We were evidence to what happened there.
Mm.
And then they can't say, oh, you're a liar. Oh, you were just giving an excuses or inventing a story. No, they were there and they were sharing their stories to so many people. And it's not easy to face that trauma again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were amazing and they are amazing. And some of them also came to support. They said, like, like we were standing in the university and most of the students just ran to the class. They didn't care. And honestly, I was like,
Mm.
okay, I'd rather that than people spit on your face or something.
Yeah.
And at the end, one of the girls, I think she was mixed race girl, she came to me and she was like, I'm the part of the silent, the major silent
So,
students,
yeah.
and she said, "We support you guys. We are with you, but we will not say this out loud." And she said, like I've been watching you standing and talking with others so respectfully, and I just sending you hugs and sending you hugs for your family. And she was very supportive. And she came right when we like closed everything, wrapping up the
Mm.
table, the chairs, like everything that we had there. She was like, I'm the part of the silent majority, but I'm with you.
Did she say
Um,
why she is silent? Like why
oh,
she didn't want to
beautiful.
be public?
Like I feel for them, it's just going into something that you don't really know about and they don't really care. Like if I was a non-Jewish student, and like there was a war, I don't know, in Iran or Indonesia or North Korea, and if it's not
Mm.
related to me personally, why would I care? I have exams to do, I have things to do, I need to apply for internship, so many
Mm.
things in their minds. So I'm judging them for favor to Letova. And the fact that she was saying like we're the part of the silent majority and we still support you, it's a big thing. It's a big thing because honestly we didn't see a lot of anti-Semites. We see, but they didn't come to us with like Palestinian flags
No, of course
while
not.
they're, yeah,
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem, thank God.
Mm.
But we saw like at the middle of the night when we were coming from a football game, um, a Palestinian supporters, they were like doing graffiti on the floor about what Israeli does in Gaza.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that killing innocent life, it's okay. It's not. But we are on the war and we have hostages there and it's our sisters and brothers and we want them back. We want them back home. It's like every day.
Yeah.
You can't handle it. So we're doing the most efforts not to hurt people, but sometimes there is no way. Um, so yeah, like maintaining the connection between Jews and diaspora and the
Mm.
Israelis and to be proud of who you are. That's two things that I've that I've saw since the war.
Mm. Well, I hope that that continues even in the good times in the future.
Yeah.
So, are there some Jewish women, either now or in history, that inspire you?
Yes. Yes. First, I'll start from personal. and then I'll go to something bigger. So I think the Jewish in my community, the Jewish women in my community, especially all the women that their husband in the duty reserve or in the army, and I see how they're trying to facilitate their work, their career, maintaining the kids and their mental health and the relationship with the husband. There's so many things. And I just want to say, for me, they're a great example of how to maintain life when you have like um unclarity of what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm.
5 minutes, you don't know what's going to happen. So for me, they're a role model. And also my aunt, the way she she's maintaining her household. Like for me, people who got divorced and still maintaining a healthy household, it's something that it should be appreciated. And most people, like, I don't know if they appreciate that, but like for me, it's something that, wow, I'm proud of you for doing this. And it's like the small thing. I could say like famous Jewish women, but for me, it's like from my practical life and the people that I
Yeah.
see, for example, in my life,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, and then others. And also, there is a Jewish woman named Belaynesh Ayach. She was a Zionist activist that was helping to Ethiopian Jews Beta Israel in Addis Ababa, and she was giving them food and she was helping them with the certificates to make Aliyah to Israel.
Mm.
And she really risked herself because the government didn't like it, and she was doing this secretly. And she was hosting people. She was giving them food, and she did it. She did it not for herself, but for the Jewish nation, and
Mm.
I admire that.
Yeah, amazing. Um, so I like to end the show with some music because I think music is one of those things that can a really easy and digestible way to be introduced to another culture or another language, and also more enjoyable as well. And if you have an Ethiopian song, either a Jewish Ethiopian song or just a traditional song or anything that you think people in Australia should hear, or an artist that we should know about, that I can share, that I can find and I can play during the show.
I have something in my mind. It's it's of a singer named Teddy Afro. He's very popular, famous singer among the Ethiopians in general. And he has a song that the name of it is Shemendefer. It's in French, it's a train. It means train. And it's like a love story of a Muslim guy and a Christian girl that falling in love with each other. But she was concerned because she said, "Oh, you're Muslim. How am I going to have like a relationship with you, or how I'm going to build my future with you?" And
Mm-hmm.
he says to her, "We're gonna overcome the gaps. We can be together." And they were like, their dates would be in the Shemendefer. They would meet at the train, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like having dates there. And for me, it's like an analogy that like so many Jewish people came from the diaspora, so different from each other,
Mm.
and we have some so cultural gaps, but we're gonna be together. We're gonna overcome
Mm.
the fears, the cultural gaps, the stereotypes. I'm very optimistic about my people because I love them and I love myself. So when I'm hearing this, I'm translating this to my perspective and my story. So I hope you will enjoy this song. It's very beautiful. And thank you, Dahlia.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story and your thoughts, and it's definitely something that we need to be sharing here because, In Australia, we're so far away, it's sometimes hard to feel like we're able to do anything, because we're so isolated from the rest of the world, and especially from Israel. And I know that a lot of Australian Jews have felt a sense of helplessness this past year because if we can't physically go there, and aside from like donating money, it's very difficult to find a way to help. So I hope that this can help.